that, I'll welcome Ed Hassinger. He's the Director and Chief Engineer of Missouri DOT to bring you greetings from our host state agency.
Hey, so good afternoon. First, let me welcome you to Missouri. So it seems like we've been the host of a lot of things here recently. So last month we hosted AASHTO's Committee on Design in Kansas City. And this month we're doing this here in St. Louis. And then next month we're hosting the Structures Committee in Branson. So we are happy to have you all here. And when I'm in a room with a lot of experts, it just makes me feel smarter. So it's great to be in the room with a lot of experts in the arena. And first of all, where's Phil Rufus? Phil is our expert, and I think you're person on this committee, but a year ago, Phil asked me if I would do this, and I said I would be happy to do this. So it's great to be here. So Phil asked me to do a little bit of just kind of basic what's going on with funding and how we operate in Missouri. But I want to start with back in the early 2000s. Missouri is responsible for about 34,000 miles of road. And it ranges everywhere from interstate highways that have almost 200,000 cars a day on them to two-lane blacktops that have 20 cars a day. And we're responsible for everything in between. Back in the early 2000s, our interstate system was 40% good. It was really a bad time to be in Missouri. We had fallen into the trap of spending money on the shiny thing, right? The new interchange, the four-lane highway, and we didn't look at what preservation needs we had. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story. But as we go forward, you know, we were looking at this year, or about 2 years ago, looking at we need to shore up our funding in Missouri. And we've been trying to get our gas tax increase for 23 years. So we started looking at what are the high priority unfunded needs in this state. And we also kind of heard some rumblings on the federal level that we were going to increase the federal program significantly. So we started with, let's go around the state and let's talk about what we really need to fund. Not saying we're gonna, but just say, let's get them in order. So we came up with basically tiers of projects that we thought we could bite off and put that into an unfunded needs list for the next 10 years so people could see what money might buy. And so that was the start of the process. So I want to share this chart with you. If you look at it, we had a really small program back in the early 2016 timeframe. It grew significantly, and if you look at that next bar, we had a contractor awards of about $5 billion. Almost every dollar of that $5 billion went to asset management. We did no projects, hardly at all, that were anything but asset management. And that was a reaction to that early 2000 timeframe when our interstates were in 40% good condition. We made a fundamental shift to say, we're just not going to spend money on new stuff. But even at that $5 billion number, we were still falling behind. Our really low volume minor roads were getting worse. Some regions of the state were not keeping up. And so when we talked about that unfunded needs list, one of the things we said is we're going to be asset management first. And I think that resonated because we got our legislature to vote a 2.5 cent increase in the gas tax that goes up 2.5 cents every year for the next 5 years to a ceiling of 12. And then at the same time, the federal IJA or bill got passed. And so now we're talking about, with some multimodal funding, a program of almost $10 billion. 7.65 of that is contractor awards on the MoDOT system. And we're going to repeat that. Financial forecast, develop unfunded needs, develop a STIP, and repeat, rinse and repeat. And I wanted to share this with you. This is what $10 billion look like. Not too impressive, right? This is like the Reader's Digest version of what $10 billion buys you. So this is our Reader's Digest version of our 5-year plan that has every project in it for the next 5 years. And what I wanted to talk to you about was what we're doing with asset management. So back in I'd say about 4 years ago, we updated what would it take to take care of our system. And it really, if you look at this chart, the blue is really kind of our bread and butter system stuff with roads and bridges. And then the red is Missouri is blessed with the two biggest rivers in the country. And so when we put a bridge across one of those, the cost starts at 200 million and goes up from there. We just awarded one with Illinois that was 550 million, something like that. And we realized that no one of our districts can stomach that kind of a hit to their budget in any given year. So we decided we're going to take major bridges off the top. So we've got 200 bridges that are over 1,000 feet long. That's why you see that one kind of move up and down, because it depends on when those come due and how big they are. But I think the key in this chart that I want to point out is the thing we didn't do in the early 2000s was we didn't grow our number for inflation. Back then we said it'll take 400 million to take care of the system, and we didn't forget. We just couldn't find the money to say, hey, we're going to grow that year on year for inflation. So our commission in this last round of discussions said, not only are we going to commit the money, but we're going to grow it for inflation. Now back then we were growing it by 3% a year. How many of you have projects that came within 3% of budget this year? I don't see any hands go up. We're a little worried about what's going on in the world with inflation. I wanted to show you this. This is just an example of one of our districts, but we split it up into, each type of road and quintiles by traffic volume, and then what our goals are. So we want our interstates to be 90% good. We want our majors to be 80 and our minors to be 70. And you can't read the numbers, but there's little green and red check marks or X's, and that shows where we're meeting the goals and where we're not. And what that looks like kind of helps us to know if we're spending our money in the right way. So we should be spending our money on the highest volume roads first. And that kind of shows that we are. We also have our bridges in here by number and type and square foot, because Missouri has 10,000 bridges on the state system, so that is a huge investment we have to make. I know this is about pavement in here, but when we look at asset management, we got to look at both. Whoops, wrong way. So kind of the impact of that, this is our last year construction letting. And you can see that there were some months in there we let $100 million worth of work a year. And I told our contractors a year ago, I said, you better get ready. Because with the money that we got coming in and the plans that I just showed you in that book, in 21, this is what we did. In 22, this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to let $125 million worth of contracts every month, month in, month out for the next 5 years. Our contracting industry is a little bit stretched right now, is all I can tell you. And part of that is leading to some of the really high inflation costs that we're dealing with. But this is good news. We've got a commitment on funds, we've got a commitment from our commission on asset management, and we've got some really talented people amongst like you in this room that have put in place some really good plans. This just kind of gives you a idea year by year. We're going to let about $1.5 billion. That's the top line. The red line in the middle shows you where we were a year ago. So we've really increased our program by about $500 million a year. And prior to last year, 96 or 90, I guess 94% of our program went to asset management. Even with the influx of money that we've got, this year's 5-year plan that I just showed you, we're still 83% asset management. So we're going to still have some money to do some of those things that people want to see, but still the vast majority of what we're doing in this state is pure asset management. So we're committed to that. With that, we have a staffing shortage, probably like everybody else. And so we've increased our consultant budget by over double because that's what it's going to take to get these things ready to go to a contract. And then this just kind of gives you our outlook. This construction program has about 1,800 projects in it. We're going to touch about 46,000 lane miles of road, 1,400 bridges, and about $8.1 billion. So I would tell you that we really need the input of this group because we want to continually get better. We've tried all those things. We're kind of a DOT that likes to try things. We'll step out on the limb a little bit to see if things will work. Just don't want to make the mistake twice, right? So we're known as the people that kind of pioneered asphalt recycled shingles in our mixes. We do more of that, I think, than any state in the country now. We just put a pilot program on the ground to put recycled plastic bottles in asphalt with our, we have a transportation center here in Missouri called MPPP. It's the Missouri Center for Transportation Innovations, partnered with our 4 state universities, and they just put down a test bed in Columbia on one of our roads with recycled plastic bottles. So we're going to see how that works. And we got a lot of other things going on in the state. So we're pretty excited to share what we're doing and hopefully learn from what you all are doing.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.